The idea that receiving vaccines would be parental choice scares me.
During the pandemic, we learned that science had become a new orthodoxy. What I mean by that is they were making claims that were not undergirded by empiricism and observable evidence. They were making ideological claims. Shut up! You're not a doctor. The medical establishment was placed at the heart of our culture. Science was placed at the heart of our culture. God was cast to the sidelines. With no individual connection to God, you are free to be told what to do by whoever tells you that they are your God now. Well, it looks like the orthodoxy has taken a pretty significant blow. Of course, we all believe in science, the process by which we find out previously indeterminate truths through processes of clinical trials, observed evidence. But part of a rigorous scientific process would include who paid for those experiments, who benefits from those experiments, why are these experiments, like, vitamin D or ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine experiments not taking place? Is it to do with money? Is it to do with power? Real science is what we want, and to conduct real science, you need real principles. Bobby Kennedy has real principles. That's why the establishment is working so hard to destroy him before he takes office. Let's have a look, first of all, at former acting CDC Director Richard Besser saying that children's vaccines should be issued by the state, and any parents that attempt to get in the way should themselves be, I don't know, is there some sort of vaccine available that makes you sort of very tired and makes your heart weaker? They should be given that. If there is one, I'm not saying there is one.
The idea that receiving vaccines would be parental choice scares me.
Good that, because it's just a few words, but it's the revelation that underneath their systems of government and control are assumptions such as you are stupid. You are stupid. That's why we need the ability to censor, because you can't decide truth from fiction. You are stupid. You can't decide whether or not your children require a particular medication, so we should decide for you. You are stupid and you are not valuable, and human beings are fundamentally not valuable. There's a lot of assumptions based into that perspective right there, just in a few words.
One of the things that we have in America is a contract between each other. And an important part of that in public health is vaccination. I vaccinate my children to protect them, but also to protect other people's children. Sending a child to school, you need to have that confidence that the child sitting next to them isn't going to give them measles or whooping cough because their parent decided that they didn't want to get their child vaccinated because they're hearing all of this misinformation.
Well, one thing we could do is have some publicly available clinical trials to look at when it comes to the efficacy of all these vaccines. One thing we could do is look at any examples where big pharmaceutical companies have behaved deplorably. You wouldn't want to find out, for example, that Johnson & Johnson settled out of court for hundreds of millions because baby powder was causing cancer, allegedly, never proven, didn't go to court. Or you wouldn't want to find out that there was an opioid crisis that was needlessly induced because people put profits ahead of the value of human life. And if you did have access to that information, if during the pandemic you also found that Pfizer's files were going to be sealed for 75 years, that they never clinically trialed for transmission, that Moderna had extraordinary connections to government and are even now still spending money to censor and control the voices of significant online personalities, you would have to question whether or not you would trust them. So before we get to the bit where we're judging parents who are cynical and skeptical about big pharma who exist solely, I would say, to make profits, and maybe almost as an inadvertent side effect may occasionally come up with useful products. Before we get to the point of attacking parents, let's ensure that we're not institutionally corrupt. And the kind of man you need to undertake that investigation is Bobby Kennedy. So you better get on and smear that dude or assassinate him, otherwise there's some changes coming.
We count on it. What if that child had an immune problem and they're in there and their parent and their children who decided not to be vaccinated? We vaccinate our kids because we care about our children, our families, and our community.
Yeah, that's right. We care about our families and our community. Why is that? Is there some inherent value in people? Were people made in someone or something's likeness? Is there a reason for us to be ethical? Is there a set of values that we can rely on? Is there an investigation that could be undertaken there? And is the person to undertake that investigation former White House press secretary, current MSNBC or CNN? They all look the same to me. Pundit Jen Psaki. Let's get into her perspective on all this.
We have seen nominations before from presidents of both parties where there have been ethical and substantive issues. Let's not forget, we had a nominee for HHS secretary in this administration who had never dealt with health care before being nominated. So I think the notion that...
I'm not here to defend. He was the Attorney General for the state of California. This is a little bit of a different...
He had experience suing healthcare companies, but not anything to do with healthcare.
Wait, no, hang on a second. As an Englishman, I reserve the right to drink in this way. Now, Robert Redfield used to work at, was it the CDC or the NIH? It was the CDC, and I met that Robert Redfield briefly. He'll come on the show, by the way. We should put him down as a guest. He'd be a good guest. He has pointed out that Bobby Kennedy's skepticism actually makes him more reliable and useful, not less. Indeed, when dealing with corruption, skepticism is a pretty good utility.
Do you think we should be worried at all, like if he gets confirmed?
Should we? Can we worry? Can we? Should we?
That he could sort of start a real no vaccine culture and put that into public policy?
No, Brian, I don't think that. I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest advocates for vaccine. You mentioned that when I was CDC director, I would say that I think vaccines are the greatest gift of science to modern medicine, and I still believe that. Kennedy's not anti-vaccine. What Kennedy is about is transparency about vaccine, honest discussion about vaccines, asking for the data to show that these vaccines are safe.
Because he's not anti-vaccine, he's pro-transparency. We know that that's a perfectly reasonable position. Pro-transparency, what a great position. A position that could be mapped onto many government departments. Now, because the media and the sources and resources from which the media get their information know that we'd be sympathetic to that. Well, transparency, that's a good thing. Being skeptical and having conversations, that's a good thing, right? Because they know that you'd agree with that. What they have to do is amplify the charge to Kennedy and say, he's an anti-vaxxer, he's a lunatic. In the same way that they have to tell you that Trump is Hitler so that you don't vote for Trump. How did that go for them? They have to say that Kennedy is a lunatic, a kook. He strapped a whale to his head. He's got a worm that lives in his mind. He killed a bear in Central Park with the tip of his dick. Don't let him be in charge of your kid's medicine. When in fact, all he's actually done is said, should we just have an honest conversation and have access to the data?
Let's be honest, most K-Cup pods are serving you mouldy, pesticide-laden rubbish. Chains like Dunkin', they're stinking the place out with their stale coffee and expecting you to say cheers. 1775 Coffee makes sure you don't have to drink a chemical soup when you want a caffeine lift. 1775 Coffee steps in to slap the mediocrity right out of the competition. Their K-Cup pods are filled with single origin, high-altitude beans, hand-picked by people who know what flavour actually is. It's coffee that will slap your brain fast awake. Faster, in fact, than a government scandal. Who doesn't need an injection of this new caffeine inflection? Kamala Biden? Get this stuff down you. You've got a choice of medium roast, dark roast and mushroom blend. Yeah, actual mushrooms like lion's mane and reishi to boost your brain power as well as giving you an immediate lift. Because let's be honest, if your coffee isn't strong enough to overthrow a small government, what's the point? This coffee is for people who don't want a participation trophy. This is coffee for winners. Go to 1775coffee.com, grab your 24-pack and tell corporate coffee to take a hike. That's go to 1775coffee.com, grab your 24-pack and tell corporate coffee to take a hike. Caffeine that will help you overthrow the powerful.
Their lies are so ludicrous that in the end it's inevitable that they become exposed. And when they're exposed, they try to repo. The only criticism I have of Robert Redfield is that you should change the angle on your laptop.
And they're efficacious. And the mere question of asking, what's the data for safety? Many of his detractors say, okay, well, you're anti-vax. No, just show me the safety data. Show me the efficacy data. I have high confidence that Kennedy is going to be a strong supporter of transparency on vaccines, and where the vaccine data shows that they're efficacious and a benefit to the American public, he will promote them. I think, Brian, we need transformational change. Right now, we've created, over the last 20, 30 years, we've developed a disease system we need to make a health system. And when Kennedy says he wants to help make America healthy again, when I was CDC director, one of the challenges was we lost about 1.2 million people died of COVID. Other countries like Taiwan lost less than 10,000 people. Why did we lose so many people? We lost so many people is because
our people are unhealthy.
We're a sick nation. And Kennedy... Kennedy is really committed to making us healthy again, and I do agree with you. We should all get behind him. Making a healthy America is not a partisan issue. We ought to get behind him and help him make us healthy again.
If you love science so much, why stop the investigation there? America is a sick nation. Why is America a sick nation? What are the conditions that make America a sick nation? Are American people fundamentally weak when they come from such a wide variety of ethnic backgrounds? That doesn't make sense. So it's not genetic, all right. So it must be their conditions. Well, what is it? Is it the air? Is it the plants that's making America sick? No, it can't be that. That doesn't make sense, does it? Because not all Americans are sick. Right, let's have a look at it then. Is it the food that they're eating? Yeah, it's the food they're eating. Is it the medications they're taking? Yeah, it's the medications they're taking. So what is it that's creating those conditions? It can't be weak and vulnerable things, because weak and vulnerable things, by definition, don't have control of circumstances. So it must be powerful things. What could those powerful things be? Might they be corporations and institutions? Might they in particular be the relationship between big food and institutions of government? Might you find when you look at the nature of government that there are deep-seated and entrenched individuals that can't be fired even when a new administration is voted in? Might we find that there are donations and lobbying that take place that come out of the food industry that prevent it from being regulated? Might you even find that some of the regulatory bodies are themselves funded by the very corporations that they're meant to be regulating, as happens within Big Pharma by the FDA, that receive at least 50% of their funding from the Big Pharma companies that they regulate when it comes to matters of clinical trialing and patenting new medications, at least. So what we're talking about are institutional problems. Why is America sick? Because of powerful interests. What would make America healthy again? Taking on and confronting those powerful interests. How will that be possible unless you have a government that has a mandate to serve the interests of ordinary people and leaders that are willing to take on these entrenched bureaucratic classes of people and powerful globalist corporations? And hopefully in Trump and Bobby Kennedy we have that. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? What an exciting time this could potentially be. In which ways do you imagine that the CDC and Big Food and Big Pharma are, like the blob they are morphing and reforming in order to keep their grip upon the levers of power? There will be myriad ways in which they are trying to take control, and that is what we're going to have to be alert to. This might not be a perfect administration coming in January, but what you can see pretty clearly is that the establishment are terrified. That's why Jen Psaki is sort of panicking about whether or not former heads of the health institutions were themselves doctors. That's why you've got former heads of the CDC saying, oh, it's terrifying, the idea that parents should make choices for their children's health themselves. What an outrageous position to undertake. And from where would you get the ethical undergirding and confidence necessary to oppose those kind of gargantuan tyrants?
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.